Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm a social studies educator, historian, and host of this, the Everything is a Primary Source podcast. I'm also an avid collector of popular culture artifacts. I love what I find at thrift store outlets, garage sale leftovers, and what I spot just making my way around the built world. I enjoy sorting through boxes of free books and magazines, not to mention online collections like Internet Archive, and of course the Library of Congress. But you don't need to spend your time digging through bins or following online rabbit holes to get a look into the past. The movies and TV we watch, the books we read, and the games we play are all documents of the past. So is fashion, food, music, toys, even the roads we travel on and the places we live and work in. Everything is a primary source. This podcast is the result of exhibiting these kinds of artifacts in public, getting passersby to select an item they connect with, and then chatting with me to see what it says about the time, place, and people who made it. The conversation you are about to hear, therefore, is your history, my history, our history, through popular culture. Right, so I'm actually... this is even before the event started. I'm with Peter right now, Peter Vinton, and we're at Free Comic Book Day, the last one of its magnitude here in Rochester, New Hampshire. And
end of an era.
Yeah, so you've done this before.
I'm kind of a regular here. I've been doing this about 8 years now. Ralph and his crew have been very good to me. It's a wonderful event. I love how they bring the whole town together and make it it's like trick-or-treating for grown-ups.
Yeah, that's such a good way of putting it. And even for the little kids, too, because it's like, they get to wear their costumes 6 months ahead of time.
Exactly.
They don't need to wait. But it's a wonderful event. We're going to be sad to see it go, but you do plenty of other... tell me a little bit about your artwork.
I have been doing freelance art for about, coming on towards 20 years now. Mostly art for hire, but I have also developed a graphic novel, a near-future dystopic science fiction series called The Monitors Guild, 2 volumes of which are already out, and I am currently working on volume 3. Ultimate goal is to have 5 volumes. So it's inspired by the fact that I grew up in Boston and was steeped in the early days of the Revolution as very much a part of my upbringing. So I thought, well, let me write a graphic novel about that. So it's essentially a retelling of the American Revolution, but I've set it in the year 2050. So not too distant future, but to make the events a little more approachable and understandable. Yeah. So a way of sneaking the history lesson.
Right, and I imagine that, a lot of the themes and the ideas behind the American Revolutionary War and the Revolution itself are not only, they repeat themselves. They repeated themselves 7 years afterwards with the Civil War.
Very much so.
They just made a movie called Civil War, and that's set in not the too distant future.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I wish I could say this is an original idea, but no, an awful lot of science fiction authors and comic book writers embrace the idea of the near future dystopia as an excellent vehicle for storytelling. Mine doesn't have any superheroes or too much cyberpunk in it. It's mostly real people wearing real clothing, but it's mostly behind the scenes, hacking, cyber infiltrations.
I love it, and that's... as you pointed out when we got, everything is a primary source. So you having that idea and then putting it that way is totally influenced by, because I would say that seems to be the going trend of a lot of, in the 21st century especially, a lot of the stories that show up in comic books. It's less about superpowers. It's more about real people doing extraordinary things. Or just regular things.
Yeah. There is glory in the mundane.
There is. Well, speaking of breaking the mundane, the thing from the table that you selected that you would like to talk about today is the score for Star Wars. Today is Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. And the record of that score, the album from 1977. With the poster included.
That's the bonus part. You still have the poster in there. You have no idea how much that counts for.
Well, it was actually a gift from my mother-in-law some years ago. She just had a bunch of records that she gave to me because I had a record player. And when somebody that grew up in the time period after phonographs and they get a record player, it's kind of like a big deal. Like, oh, now I get to collect those things that are collecting dust. And she, to my knowledge, is not really a Star Wars fan, but her possession of it kind of speaks to what things were like in 1977.
Very much so.
When Star Wars came out. So the question that I selected from our list of things is, why did they make it?
My 7-year-old me, which is the age I was in the summer of 1977, why they made it is so you can continue to experience the sheer visceral awesomeness of having seen that movie in theaters, which explodes across a 7-year-old's brain, but mostly to be able to just capture a little bit of that and experience it over and over again through the splendor that is John Williams when he was in his creative peak, or actually before he even reached his creative peak. So this was my way of re-experiencing Star Wars over and over again. The glossy photographs that are in there in the insert, the cast pictures, and the somewhat diffused and wonderfully abstract portrait of Vader on the back cover, which sprinkles in a whole star field beyond. I mean, Vader is the most iconic symbol that comes out of Star Wars even today. But this was 7-year-old me's version of re-experiencing that thrill over and over and over again.
Which, and I've talked about other records, soundtracks with people before at these, including the Grease soundtrack, which was from the following year, and the same message was, because in this world of zero home video, you could go and, some of these movies stayed in the theaters for quite a while, so you could keep going back and back and back, but they knew that was not going to last forever. So to take it home with you, that was the purpose of it. And so that tells us one thing, but it also gives us insights about how the other media forms in the 70s were really utilized to prop up each other. Because, yes, television was used to promote Star Wars. They had trailers on television that you would see.
Absolutely.
But this thing, like we said, comes not only with those wonderful photographs inside, but a poster. So it's almost like this big package that a kid gets of all right, print media is going to help me remember the movie by way of the audio media that I have.
Exactly.
And it's like this big thing. So, I mean, is that something that you think holds up as far as an understanding of that time period of print had a much bigger role?
Oh, very much so. I would, again, 7-year-old me would pounce on anything printed like a magazine cover or a book cover that looked like it might have had even vaguely hinted at a picture of Darth Vader on it. Mad Magazine got a whole lot of mileage out of spoofing Star Wars that summer. And then Marvel got rights to continuing the Star Wars stories.
And I think they may have even gotten the contract beforehand as a way to promote it, because they knew that comic book fans would be the core audience that would be going to the theater for it.
Exactly.
In the first place.
Yeah, this movie knew its fan core, knew its fan base before the fan base itself knew. And significantly, Starlog magazine, which at the time was really mostly a Star Trek fanzine, issue number 7 just broke all the barriers by suggesting, here's some insights and some behind-the-scenes special effects of this new movie that's coming out this summer. And Starlog's place in history was cemented at that point. So, yes, very much a multimedia experience before the word multimedia was a buzzword. And, of course, let's not forget the toys and the very early model electronic games and the toy lightsabers, and of course the action figures.
Yeah, and I've that's in this box right here.
Oh yes, I recognize that little carrying case too.
And a lot of those in there are from the original run of the toys, but then I also have a few more from the 1990s when they came out with the special editions and new toys and everything like that, which. It's interesting because when the special editions came out, it's in retrospect. I didn't think of it at the time, but in retrospect, I see that as the reason they did it is because my generation. I was born in '81, so I was 2 years old when the last of the original trilogy came out. I don't really remember it, and I was definitely not part of that huge fanfare. And then when Episode 1 came out, I was 18, so I was like a little bit
beyond that.
So I grew up with these movies. I love them. I cherish them. My parents had this record, so I did listen to it and would look at the pictures as I played with the toys and did the whole thing. But I didn't get that excitement of going to the theater to see them. And when they brought those special editions out, they added some things, and I'm assuming they must have. I think I remember seeing John Williams had brought back the London Symphony Orchestra and recorded some new music. Does that sound
I
right?
don't know if new music was recorded, but some unused tracks that I vividly remember from this album that ultimately didn't appear in the original cinematic release in '77 did find their way into the special edition.
Okay.
I'm very specifically thinking of a track that's associated with the garbage compactor scene. And of course, since I played this album over and over and over again 40 times a day to my mother's apparent extreme annoyance, and God bless her for that level of patience, there are a couple of musical passages and leitmotifs on this album that didn't actually appear in the original cinematic release. But as soon as I went into the theater to watch the special editions, they found a home for it. Right. Oh, well done, Maestro Williams. Thank you. So,
and one of the biggest bummers I got from the special editions is they did not include that scene from Mos Eisley when he goes to Anchorhead to pick up his power converters, or the part where he's looking through the binoculars and sees
the battle overhead.
Yeah. And I remember when I was in high school, a friend of mine who was equally into Star Wars as I was produced. I have the Empire Strikes Back version of it over here, but he had the Star Wars.
The Star Wars storybook, and it has the big Darklighter scenes in it.
I was captivated. I was like, what? Because not only does it change, not everything, but enough.
It establishes the world a little bit better. And again, the Marvel Comics edition also included those scenes, the Anchorhead scenes.
Yeah.
I think ultimately George Lucas's then wife, Marcia, who won an Oscar for editing Star Wars, made the right decision to expunge those scenes because otherwise it feels like a little bit like George is kind of remaking American Graffiti.
Right.
You know, someday I'm going to be something. Someday I'm going to be somewhere. It just feels like it's kind of repeating that trope. So
which
ultimately I think the pacing
it's already there anyway, though. I mean, American Graffiti is my all-time favorite movie. And you're absolutely right. When those scenes are installed in there, it's like American Graffiti in space. It's just
very much so.
But you already have a lot of that anyway. With the movie as is, you don't really, because kid, when you break it down to its essentials, it's the same story basically. Kid is stuck in a place he doesn't, want to stay there, and then
feels like there's something greater out there in the world for him.
He goes off, and it's all that. But
and I know that's got to be a disappointment to the actor Garrick Hagan, who played Biggs, to only be reduced in role to
like 5 seconds.
Luke's wingman, who dramatically and heartbreakingly is destroyed in the final trench run. And was that emotionally significant? The audience wonders to itself. Yes, it was.
But only if you read the print material
exactly
that went along with it. Because even the book and the novelization of Star Wars also preceded the movie.
Oh, that's right. I neglected to mention that.
By
the
almost
novelization.
A year, I think. And that's a really good book.
It is. Amazing cover art by John Berkey. Again, very abstract, much like the back cover of the album here. And I know it was ghostwritten by Alan Dean Foster, but it's credited to written by George Lucas.
Yeah. He's just sitting there, already starting to collect the checks. He's like,
yep.
This is all what I'm doing. It's amazing though, because that era, 70s, mid 1970s America. I mean, we're coming off of it's the bicentennial, right? So there's that reevaluation of Americanism. What does it mean to be an American? And there's a new generation of adults that are taking kind of their own perspectives on the American dream and America's place in the world and things like that. And I feel like, Lucas is definitely part of that. Spielberg is part of that. All those filmmakers from the American Zoetrope group and everything like that. They're all part. John Williams, sometimes we assume because he has like a white beard and always has had a white beard that he's like forever like an older guy. But he was a younger guy then too.
He was indeed. He was very innovative musically. He'd already burned himself into the zeitgeist by the theme from Jaws a couple of years earlier.
Yeah.
Everybody knew that theme and everybody knew what it to associate with. So the fact that Williams continued on that upward arc, and then he would give us Indiana Jones, and then he would give us E.T., and it's just like there was no stopping the man.
Superman.
Good heavens, yes.
And he has that, and using classical music to do it. not to borrow too much from the documentary about the Star Wars trilogy, but in an era where disco was so huge and prevalent, or not even disco, hard rock, or all these different kind of. I mean, I'm wearing a shirt of a band that was.
You're practically illustrating it right now.
Like, see, this group was, like they could have had, but even when they're in the cantina scene. Which I love that song's on here too. It's like you get
likewise.
A break from,
I, as a child, I always remember being sorry that the second Cantina song, the one that's playing while Obi-Wan and Luke are negotiating with Han and Chewie in the back booth, that does not appear on this album, and I was always sorry for that because it felt like it added yet another layer. I said, okay, we're done with that set. Move on to the next one, guys. The idea that the band has a job to do and they are focused on that.
Interestingly, if I'm not mistaken, that song is actually in an episode of Seinfeld for about 2 seconds.
I did not know that.
It's the episode where. Oh, thank you.
Since I figured it fits your motif.
Well, I want you to stop by later. We're going to talk.
Well, I'm right there.
Yeah,
so,
come by later.
Yeah,
we'll do a.
That poster fits your home.
Oh, yes, it does.
Oh, good heavens.
It does.
Oh, there's a win.
That is perfect.
Talk about exploding onto youngsters. When the first of that era of Spider-Man movies premiered, I saw that in theaters as well. And I'm jaded. This is in the early 2000s, and so firmly an adult. But I was watching 8, 9, 10-year-olds coming out of that theater having experienced the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. One child was just so high on the action and the excitement that I watched him leap at a brick wall and pretend he was climbing up of it. And it's like, okay, this movie exploded across the very same transom.
I was about 21, 20 years old then, and I was so excited for a Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
Watching it over and over again, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have been so excited. But it fits the time period.
It
perfectly.
absolutely does.
It was like right in that era.
What a wonderful segue.
I know, and
good timing on that.
The Seinfeld thing that I was mentioning. It's the episode where he has the marathon runner that he's obsessed with, like making sure he doesn't miss anything, and he. Is setting the alarm clock and the music to it, and the music that comes on for that split second is the
second Cantina song,
and he kind of does a little dance to it. And there's a few other Star Wars references in Seinfeld, but not a lot. There's the one where he's that fake bet was Dustin Hoffman in Star Wars, and
I think I remember that one.
There's a woman, a guy that he gets dates by making fake bets he knows he can't win. And he'd be like, I'll bet you a dinner that Darth Vader was in, or Dustin Hoffman was in Star Wars. And the woman's like, see, I told you were wrong. You owe me a dinner. And it's like, but yeah, so Seinfeld to the rescue when it comes to having all of the music represented in popular culture. I think we did a good job of kind of using this to paint the picture of what late 70s American economics.
Right. Everything was in
sociology.
transition, not just pop culture, but we were coming off of a depression. The inflation was running out of control. We were still licking our wounds from Vietnam and also from Watergate.
Yeah.
So, President Carter at the time referred to it as malaise, which I don't think played very well in the press, but he definitely had a point there.
And it just came in. This movie came in at the right time.
It really did.
And everything
it was
about
a lightning
it. And
rod.
That's why it was. I mean, it's actually pretty amazing that this was ready to go. The books and the magazines and all the print material, the comic books, those are ready to go. But the toys were not, because they just didn't realize how huge of an impact culturally this was going to be.
Oh, again, tortured 7-year-old me was very disappointed that Christmas because all you could get was a certificate called send this in for your early bird set, which didn't come until the following spring. which consists of a 4 action figure set of R2-D2, Luke Skywalker, Leia Organa, and Chewbacca. And at that moment in time, that was all that could be promised. There's more on the way, we promise. Darth Vader's coming, Obi-Wan is coming, Han is coming, but it was hard for a 7-year-old to understand that, or to have the patience for it.
Imagine if that 7-year-old lived in the click e-commerce era.
Oh, good heavens! Click here to order now.
Right, they would lose their mind if it'd be like, click here and you'll get it in 7 months.
You'll get it in 7
because
months.
Because even like the, I was talking about the special editions before. I totally jumped the gun on this. I went. Remember that store Saturday Matinee in the mall? They had, after I rejuvenated. I had just gone back to that euphoria of Star Wars being in the theaters again, and as soon as the Return of the Jedi was closed, I went right to Saturday Matinee because they had a sign up that said, make your deposit to get the VHS box set now. And I was
see it again for the first time.
Slapped the money on the table, and I'm like, I can't wait. Well, they had more than enough, and when they actually did come out, and I foolishly got the regular screen ratio one.
Oh,
most of the special edition stuff is in the widescreen. So I just ended up getting 3 VHSs of movies that have slight changes in them instead of, like, I love the part in and the newly named A New Hope when you see the stormtroopers combing the desert and the shuttle starts taking off in the background.
Right, it just a little bit more, the idea, here's the hint of the kind of spapeships they use, and we see the dewback lizards moving around a little bit more. And
maybe
being
a little bit too
more,
much.
It just it hints at that.
But in my copy, all you hear is the sound like taking off. I'm like, man, I never get that money back. And so I have those. But it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me over here.
And by all means, I'm here till 4. So
okay, I'm gonna send a bunch of. I'm also indulging in Star Wars nostalgia all day today. I've got a free trading card set that I'm handing out to young Padawans.
Well, my son will be here later, and he'll probably eat that up.
All right, Just it's of course I'm showcasing my artwork at the same time, but once again, I want today's 7-year-olds to experience the thrill of opening up a packet of bubblegum cards, and bubblegum is included, and enjoying some collectible Star Wars memorabilia in that summer of '77 style.
We didn't even mention the cards, but they add to that list of material to use to support.
Very much so.
If only they had VHS, they wouldn't have needed all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's so much fun talking to you.
All right, thanks so much. I appreciate this.
Popular culture, by definition, connects and unites us, and proves that people of different backgrounds, in fact, have a lot in common with one another. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, at least in part, for that reason. If it connects with you and you'd like to add to it, or any of the podcast episodes, just visit everything-history.com and search for the Everything as a Primary Source project, which can be found in the classroom section of the website. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Be sure to rate and share this podcast wherever you are listening to it now, and follow Everything as a Primary Source on social media, including YouTube and especially Instagram. Thank you for listening to the EPS podcast, where everything is a primary source.